about a week or so ago, just because I thought it'd be a good idea to reflect on what we've seen the Lord do in our church this year and all the many blessings that we've been able to witness and to see. And so it's a good time around this time of year to just look back on a year of ministry and a year of serving the Lord to see how He's blessed us. And then also, I've been giddy about this. I'm excited to put forward the vision for next year, what our focus is going to be, what we're going to be working on and aiming towards, and what our drive is going to be, and where the Lord's leading us, and new things that we're adding. So a lot of really cool, good things going on at our church. So let's jump right into it, Emily. All right. So this was our focus verse of this past year. Let the favor of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish the work of our hands upon us. Yes, establish the work of our hands upon us. And that's been in every bulletin that we've had this entire year. And we said at the beginning of this year that we wanted to be a church that actually were the hands and feet of Jesus in our community, that we wanted to actually reach our community, not just to be isolated here at our own address, but to get out and serve the community, both here in our own community and beyond. And so we've been working towards that all year. Our whole mission and drive has been aimed towards that. And even our preaching series, you'll remember I've had a lot of messages this year on evangelism and missions and getting the gospel out there because it goes with our focus. And so let's just look at a few of the ways the Lord blessed this focus this past year. So Emily, hit me with the first number. Should be an animation. There we go. Wow, that's hard to see. My apologies. I should have given you handouts. But the number is 28. And that is the number of backpacks we were able to put together for Croswell and Dacusville schools. And this was a really cool thing. The North American Mission Board, they sent us these backpacks for free and said, hey, find a way to use them to serve the community and get the message of Jesus out there. And so what we did is we said, well, there's a couple elementary schools right here in our own area that we could be serving and helping out. And so we packed these backpacks full and sent them there. And I know that they were a blessing to those schools. All right, Emily, next number. This was another cool one for us, 34. It's the number of emergency backpacks that we were able to put together for Miracle Hill. And this was really awesome because we had that guest speaker come and talk to us about, sorry, I might be coughing tonight, but come and talk to us all about how we could help out at Miracle Hill, what the churches can be doing. And we challenged the church, we thought with an appropriate number, a difficult number, but an appropriate one. And we said, let's put together 20 emergency backpacks. And we were able to put together 34. And anytime they need more, we have more ready for them and can send them their way. Next number, Emily. 3. That is the number of baptisms that we will have had at the end of this year. Now, you may be saying, well, hold on, I only remember 2 baptisms for this year. We baptized Zane and Kelsey Porter. And that's because, I haven't got to share this yet, but we're actually going to have another baptism next Sunday morning, immediately after the service. So yeah, that's right, you can applaud. Praise God for that. We are seeing God do great things. So last year, in the year 2020, we had 3 baptisms, and the Lord has blessed us, and we're going to have 3 baptisms again this year. And what's cool for me personally is I've been at this church since around 2015, 2016, and I don't really remember seeing too many baptisms. It was few and far between, and now we have back-to-back years where the Lord has given us 3 baptisms. And so I think that is a huge blessing. Anytime I get to get in the baptismal, it's always a great time, an awesome time. And so I personally am really thankful for this, and it's just an evidence that the Lord is at work in our church, that people are coming to faith, that people are realizing their need to be baptized, and we're able to do that here. So we'll begin praying for more next year as well. All right, Emily, next number. 7. That's the number of new members that we've had join our church this year, and I don't think we're going to have any more by the end of this year unless the Lord moves, but we do have a couple of other families who have talked to us about a desire to join the church, and they're praying about it currently, so we could have even more new members by the beginning of next year. But this has been a huge blessing for our church because not only are we seeing an increase in attendance, but we're also seeing people join the church and people be baptized. All right, next number, Emily. 20 is the number of Operation Christmas Child boxes that we were able to put together and send out. And that was just one of the ways that our church was able to participate in another December mission project. So again, going with our focus verse of wanting the Lord to establish the work of our hands and be a productive church. And so that was a great blessing that we were able to do that. Last number, Emily. 70. That's the average weekly attendance for Georges Creek on a Sunday morning. Now, let's just put that in perspective. I don't know that that's the exact right number, but it's the number we settled on. I think it could go up a little bit more. But let's just put this number in perspective. It was 2020, last year, at Easter, we had 12 people. And then if you were to look at our average weekly attendance for 2020, I think it was about 35 people. And so it means in 1 year's time, the Lord has doubled our average weekly attendance. Now, that is a huge blessing, church, to see that when we follow the Lord's guidance and we do what the Lord has called us to do, He is actually adding people to our midst, and we're having more and more people come. Every Sunday, we're getting new families, new visitors, new people coming. And so this is just one of the ways the Lord is blessing us. And if you want even more perspective on this, when the Piedmont Baptist Association put out their 2021 annual report, they had this interesting to me, I should say, interesting statistics about our churches and our own association here, what their membership roll looks like versus their average attendance. So there's a church in our association, they have about close to 7,000 members, average weekly attendance of about 2,000. There's another church in our association that has about 2,400 members, average weekly attendance of 600. There's another in our association that has, I think, approximately 1,200 on their membership roll and 300 average weekly attendance. For Georges Creek, our official membership roll at the time the Piedmont Baptist Association put that out was roughly 100, which means that out of having 100 members, we had 70 of our members in attendance. Now, if you take into account the homebound and those who are shut in and not able to come, and we just think about that number, you probably increase it to about 85, possibly 90. And you look at that, and so you're saying we have a membership roll of about 100 people, and we're able to see over 75%, roughly, could be 80%, come in on an average Sunday morning. That's amazing for a church, especially in our area where you don't see that level of commitment. And so I think the Lord's really blessed us. So I just want to highlight a couple of the things that we've been involved with this year, and I'm going to have a couple speakers come up and elaborate on that. So these are three of our highlights. We're going to have a number of these, but we're participating in the Miracle Hill Cottage, the Missionary House, and our parking lot. So let me just speak to two of these real quick, and then I might have Vicki McKinney come up and talk about the third. So starting off our parking lot, when the schools shut down or when the schools were not able to meet, we actually loaned out our parking lot to the school district so they would be able to park buses there and provide students with meals and deliver meals and have them come pick up meals, things like that. And so that was just one way that we were able to utilize our facilities for the greater good, because I'm a firm believer that that's what we should be doing all the time. Everything we have at this church is a gift from God, and we should be good stewards of that gift, even if it's something like a parking lot, and we can loan that out and it could be of use to our community. The other thing you see there, the Missionary House, this is actually the parsonage across the street. Thankfully, Anna and I have a house, and so we don't necessarily need the parsonage. And so we decided, well, this is another thing that we have from God. How can we take what God has given us and actually utilize it, make it a benefit, and be good stewards of this house? And so we converted it into a missionary house. And right now, we don't have missionaries in there, but we do have a family in there. Their house literally burnt down. They had nowhere to go, and we said, you can come and stay in our house. Insurance is paying for them to be there, but we took a family that had literally nowhere else to go, and by God's grace, because God had provided us with resources, we were able to say, you can live here. Rebuild your house, do what you need to do, but we want to allow you to live over there. But this is going to be a house for missionaries in the future. Whenever we have missionaries who are home on furlough and things like that, they're going to be able to come and stay in our parsonage across the street, and it's just another way that we're contributing. We actually have missionaries scheduled April, I believe, of next year. May? Yeah, May of next year, we're going to have our first missionary family move in there. So that's a huge blessing. And so we also did this Miracle Hill Cottage. Lee or Vicki, whichever one of you wants to come and say a couple things about that. Lee loves public speaking, so all right, I've got a microphone for you. But basically, as way of introduction, while they're coming up here, we were involved in Miracle Hill, and a lot of us actually went and we toured these houses and things like that, where they're preparing them to be able to have a foster family in there, and they were saying how we could help out, how we could participate, and so I'm going to let them talk on that for just a few minutes.
I actually want to go way backwards as to how you see God working and bringing you into a need, because we had Life House Ministries come and speak to the women's Heartstrings group. Now, Life House is a foster group home that a church, a local church down the road from us, Life House Church, sponsors that home. And they helped, Miracle Hill helped them to license their home there. And their church raises funds to build homes, to build foster homes. And the parent, the house parent of the current home that's just down the street at Dacus, going into Dacusville Elementary, you'll pass their church, and then you'll pass where these homes are. And they came and spoke to the women's group on one of our monthly meetings, and they talked about the home and the need in our state and how children are so displaced, and that in the upstate, we often take children from the low state and care for them because they have nowhere to go in the low state. You talk about very poor areas of our state. So a lot of times the children even that are in the low part of South Carolina are housed in our area in the upstate. That brought about the contact with the lady at Miracle Hill. We started doing the backpacks for back to school. Now, this is just God working. And Life House, some of their children go to Dacusville Elementary School. Some of them go to private schools. Some of them are homeschooled. You know, they have a variety in that home. And so they were included in our backpack back to school ministry. So we actually took bags to that house for those children, in addition to the number up there. Yeah, we took 10 additional backpacks just to that house. And in doing that, the house parent shared with me the name of the lady who is the vice president at Miracle Hill. She said, you need to talk with her. She said, I want you to speak with her. You will be very impressed with her. If you feel like you have a need or your church can provide or fulfill a need for foster children, she said, she's the right person to talk to. So I called Miss Parks and said, we've gotten these backpacks from the mission board, and we would like to utilize them. How can we use them to help you? And that's when we came up with the backpacks for Miracle Hill. And then she said to us, she said, oh, well, we've got some housing, and it's been there a long time. Some of you folks have toured these places before. Previously, they were very institutionalized. They're trying to change that image. They want them more like home settings, and they're working really hard to make them that way and usable by smaller groups. So we went up there. The Stevensons went with us that day, some of your family, and Alex and myself, and we toured. And at that time, they said they weren't really ready to work on this cottage, and they weren't really ready yet to. They thought they had a family of 10 that were going to move, like 10 children that were going to move into the other. Found out later, she told me recently that they couldn't market that house. It looked so bad the family wouldn't move in. So, but the Lord has blessed Lee and me. I was called on vacation, and I told the lady, I said, we can't really get started on that. I can't call back to my church and tell them, get on the bandwagon, get busy, hurry up. Y'all, they got a deadline. Y'all get started. I'm out here vacationing and y'all get it done. And I'll see you when I get back. So I told her, I said, when we return, we'll start. So the very week we returned, and Lee and I looked at the calendar when we finished. It took us a month to do the cottage. And I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about our adventures and how we did that.
Some of these adventures y'all might not want to know about. Because when we finally got to Pumpkin Town, without the GPS, we thought we'd accomplished something up there where the house was at. And at one time, we had the address memorized and knew everybody up there, I think. And there is no place to eat within 3 miles of that house to go out to eat. And I think they said they went back to Travelers Rest. But I can just say that working through this, and I've cried many tears, and even with Vicki, and we've prayed over that house the many days that we were in it, cleaning and sweeping and stuff. I had always had, and I've even shared it with my sister before, I had always looked back at wanting to possibly foster children. I know that that was not my calling. It never worked out, and I was never able to. I've tried to send mine off to be fostered at other places many times, and they're all grown, and I still am trying to send them out to be fostered. But, and I think many times, and even this week, I was thinking about the kids you see in the stores and stuff with the Christmas shopping today, and how quick you are to judge those kids. And I think how many times that we don't know who those kids are. Is that their children, or is that somebody that they're taking care of because God's put them in their place and they don't know what they're going to get? I've got couple of friends that have adopted children that they didn't choose who the mother was or what drugs that she did, but the actions that they're having to take as a mother and go beyond that to get them the help that they need just to be able to talk. It was just amazing. And it was so odd that I was up there one night. Vicki had left to come back early, and we had never met the lady. And to go, she went to North Carolina to pick up some furniture she found off Marketplace at a deal. And I'm like, Vicki, we can't drive to Market, can't drive to North Carolina. Oh, but she had a plan. So, but we got on this and we found furniture. We shopped at all of the Miracle Hills. And, a lot of the stuff that we got, a lot of the furniture come from Miracle Hill. A lot of it was donated, beds and stuff. And then all of a sudden they come up and she tells us she wants brand new linens. And she said, save the receipts, we're going to pay for it. So we were able to do it. And I'm excited to show y'all the pictures. I do have pictures of the house. I'm working on a way to put them together strategically to make it a little bit more interesting than just looking at pictures of houses, because I want you to feel what we feel when you walked in the house up there from the beginning to the end. But I met the lady that night, and she was nothing what we had thought, nothing that we had imagined. They were getting ready to go to church. The little teenage daughter, 17-year-old daughter that was going to be there. When I don't have girls, so to think that I'm going to go in and decorate a 17-year-old girl's bedroom is just beyond me. And the Annette that we had dealt with through Miracle Hill told us, just go decorate it. Well, I know enough to know that everybody does not like my sense of style in my house or anything else sometimes. So, we had tried to pick out stuff that would be good for about anybody there. And we went up there one time, we dropped some stuff off, and Annette said, I drove all the way from Greenville, and she works over on Pleasantburg at that office, left work to drive because she was so upset. And she got up there and she said, there was nothing wrong with anything y'all had in there. She said, it just wasn't finished yet. And I said, oh, we had much more, because my car was slap full when I had COVID, and it sat in my driveway. I said, it looked like I was living out of my car. And just taking the stuff out and back, and how many truckloads of stuff that we took up there to put out. But the next time they come back, she had written and had hugged us and told me how much she appreciated. She said, I cannot believe that there's a church and that there are people out there that, even the church that they attend, they weren't able to help like what we had done. And I said, well, it was amazing for us to get to be a part of it. And I said, and it was exciting for us to do it. I said, we're tired. I said, but we're going to keep on until it's finished with that. But the people that we met along the way with the people we met that we bought stuff from, even they said, oh, you're not paying us for this. Please take it and give it to them. Let them enjoy it. I have this extra too. Can you use this? We'll put this in your car too. Because my daddy would pass out if he knew what I'd had in his truck. And then coming from Anderson, not tied down. Because those two ladies, when I met them, she had just moved in and had a whole house full. I ended up leaving there with a TV. I went there for a Chase Lounge. I left there with the Chase Lounge, a dining table, a TV, the 4 chairs with a dining table, a rug, an umbrella hall tree stand, and she said, and this is what got me, and this turned my way of thinking around. And Edith will appreciate this because the lady said, I can sew. Said, if you need me to sew pillowcases. I said, if you need me to sew what? They just sewn pillowcases for the same group, was trying to help them out. So these ladies knew, and was not from around here, was in Anderson that I went to at night. And she said, you keep my number. If you need anything, we'll come help. I will help you. So we were very proud with the work that we had done and what we were able to carry and what the church had provided. And it was fun putting it all together, but it was more enjoyable to see what God had done and what God is doing and how to do it. And one more thing, and I'm done. I promise I'll let you have it back because I am the quiet one. After this morning, that's what I told Jan after we left. I said, Alex was talking about praising God in the trials. And I said, that's hard to do sometimes. I said, but if you don't learn how to do it, it's not, sometimes, especially with some of the things that I go through or stuff, the way it happens, I said, I'd never be able to praise Jesus for anything. And I said, and I learned today, and I've learned through the last 3 months that God's with me, and He's helping these around me, and He's showing me, and that my trials are nothing compared to what some of these others are. I said, so it's made me think back to look at these kids when I'm in the store, to be more patient, to be a little quieter, or to go to the next aisle and say a little prayer, because you don't think about what its parents are going through and what God's given them, and to see how much she appreciated her being able to move into that house, because you could tell what she was moving from to where she was moving to was a big deal to her, and how much she appreciated it all.
Some of the places that I went, and I didn't know it when I was going, and they didn't know it, but they shared with me that they had been foster parents, and I thought that was really cool.
So that was just a small report about the Miracle Hill Cottage, and it's a blessing because it's not just about doing things. As you heard, it's about connecting with people. And I remember, I won't go into detail, but I received a text from Lee one day talking about how something I had preached somehow had resonated with her, but it was as she was doing this work that God had called the church to do that she said it became real to her, and it finally clicked. And I just thought, that's God working all things together. So let's go to the next slide. I'll make this quick because I do want to get to our focus. We were able to do Country Santa. We were able to do Feet for Heat. Some of our members participated in Feet for Heat, actually walking it. But regardless of that, Georges Creek became an official sponsor for Feet for Heat this year. And so we sponsored that as one of the sponsors, providing heating for those who might not have it throughout the year. Edith, do you want to give a quick report on the So Blessed ministry from this past year? If you want to, okay. You don't have to. All right, so I was going to let Edith give us a quick report on So Blessed and the things that they were able to do this year.
Well, the last 2 years, we've been sort of restricted by COVID, so we weren't able to do much of anything last year. But this year, we have been able to do a couple of projects. And for those of you who are new, don't know, So Blessed is one of our groups at our church that we sew to make things for different organizations. Where there's a need, we try to fill it by sewing. You do not have to be able to sew to participate. You can cut, or you can iron, or you can do whatever we need. You're welcome to come and join us. But one thing we did do was make the pillowcases for Lifehouse. We made those, and I wish I knew how many. I don't remember. We also collected, we didn't sew for this one though, this was something else. We did collect birthday cards for the Lifehouse for the foster parents to give to individual children on their birthdays. So that was through Heartstrings. Let's see what else we did. We made bags in February, I think it was. We made bags for Switch. Remember we had the lady from Switch come and speak to us? We made those and delivered those. What else? I can't think of anything else for right now that we've done, but we are getting ready in January to sew something that we sewed a couple of years ago. We're going to make preemie bereavement kits. We made these a few years ago, and they've run out. We made over 200, and they've run out of them. So St. Francis Hospital, Bon Secours, would appreciate us to send more. So we'll do that in January. So if you'd like to be a part of it, join us. I'll let you know a date later, and I think that might be. Oh, yeah, we've made breast cancer pillows. That was our second time doing it. We have a speaker. Usually we have a speaker come to speak to Heartstrings about the ministry that they're involved in, or to the church, and then we try to meet a need. So we've done breast cancer pillows the second time. We've done pillowcases about the third time for different organizations through the last 3 or 4 years. But what else? Think of anything else? Jeannie? Okay. Do you want to know some of the Heartstrings things?
Sure.
Okay. I've just jotted down a few things that Heartstrings does, and that's our women's ministry. And we have done, like the Country Santa, we sponsored that. Recently we did prisoner packs for the prisoners, and we I don't know how many we even did now, 31 I think, we packed. We've also done, we visit the shut-ins, taking devotionals to them when they're due, and we have done cancer awareness, and we did the breast cancer pillows. We have speakers, whether they are someone we bring in or if we use our own ladies to speak to encourage one another. And we've done fun things church-wide. We've sponsored things church-wide this year to encourage fellowship, and we've also done some things within the Heartstrings just for fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Edith. So the women's ministry at this church is alive and well, doing really good. Last little slide that we have, that we talked about, Edith just mentioned the prisoner packets. We also did gift cards to the foster home and the CDC family. So we sponsored one last year. We're sponsoring another one this year, and I know that they're really appreciative for that. So just a quick reminder to get all that in this week for our CDC family. All right, so let's start talking about 2022. What is going to happen next year? What's our focus in our verse? So Emily, if you'll do the first thing. I believe the Lord wants us to be a complete and a healthy church. That's God's desire for every church, to be a complete church and a healthy church. So Emily, next thing, this means that we need to identify the weak points within our church and strengthen them. And we also need to identify our strong points and build those up, to shore them up. And so last thing on this slide, in order for our church to see revival, we have to be a healthy church and a prepared church. And that's ultimately my whole desire for next year. If you wanted to sum it up in one word, it would be revival. I would love for the Lord to revive our church and bring revival to our church. And so in order to do that, you have to be a complete church, you have to be a healthy church, and you have to be a prepared church. You know, I was talking to my mom about this. You don't just go out in the garden and throw some seeds before you've worked the ground. You've got to go out there, you've got to prepare the garden, you've got to work the ground in order to receive those seeds and to see blessings from that. And so, next slide. What is our focus verse going to be for 2022. You can put it up there, Emily. Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 2. Lord, I have heard of your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds, Lord. Repeat them in our day. In our time, make them known. That's our focus for next year. And I just want to break that down very quickly. I won't preach, though it's hard, but I just want to break it down in quick little, tearing this apart. So if you look at the first thing, Lord, I've heard of your fame. And so this has to do with the knowledge of the Lord and His ways. And so if we're going to be complete Christians, if we're going to be a complete church, you have to know the Bible, right? If you're going to say to the Lord, Lord, I've heard of your fame, it means that you have to be familiar with the Bible, you have to know the Bible, you have to be in the Word constantly, and you need to be thinking and applying the Bible to your everyday life. So it's not just hearing. You remember James says, don't be a hearer only, but a doer of the Word. And so we don't want to just hear the Word, we don't want to just read the Word, we actually want it to transform our minds in the way that we think so that we can move forward. Next thing, Emily. The next part of the verse says, I stand in awe of your deeds, Lord. And so this goes to the fact that it's one thing to know about God, and it's another thing to be moved by God, is it not? I know atheists who could quote the Bible to you. Satan can quote the Bible to you. They know all about God. They know the Bible, but it does nothing for their hearts. And this is one of the biggest problems in the church today, I believe, especially the church in America. You have a bunch of people who are gathered together talking about God, claiming to have a knowledge of the Word, but it does not affect their heart at all. They're not moved. So it's one thing to say, I've heard of your fame. It's another thing to step back and say, and I'm in awe of what you're doing. Last thing, Emily. Repeat them in our day, in our time, make them known. This speaks to a desire. You see, revival doesn't just happen because we are putting plans together and we're putting strategies together and we're breaking it apart as though revival's a business and we're saying, okay, well, here are the keys to revival, here are the steps to revival, here's what we need to do, and then all of a sudden you think revival's going to happen. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all. It starts with God's people having an earnest desire, a burning desire to see God do in our day what He's done before. I mean, this church, think about our church, right? There was a time when this church, on a Sunday morning, there was standing room only. Some of you have been here long enough to remember that, right? Standing room only on a Sunday morning. We've seen what the Lord can do right here at Georges Creek Baptist Church. Look at another church, right? Look at Rock Springs. They weren't always that big. And yet, look at what God has done with them. See, God can do these things over again, but it doesn't happen unless God's people have a burning desire to see this done. And so this speaks to our prayer life. This speaks to our heart. Are you the type of person right now, today, who has a burning desire to see revival happen in this church? Is it something you're praying for on a daily basis? This is going to be part of our focus for next year. All right, next slide, Emily. And so I've got 3 R's for next year. Very easy to remember. You have renew, revive, and redo. And it speaks to the 3 aspects of that verse. We want God to renew our minds. Lord, I've heard of your fame. So we want to know about God. We want Him to renew our minds, change our way of thinking, learn about the wisdom of God, and begin to apply that in our lives. You have revive, where we want God to revive our hearts, that we're not just the people who hear the Word, but we're moved by the Word, and we want to see God do great things in our time. And that speaks to the last thing, redo. It comes from a burning desire to see God do in our time what He's done before, and even greater works. The Bible says that God can do far above and beyond all we can even think or imagine. So it doesn't matter how big your prayers are, God can do more than that. It doesn't matter how much you want to see revival in this church, God can do even more than that. And so this is our focus, renew, revive, and redo. And so what is this going to look like with our preaching calendar? Because I always try to base our preaching around our focus. And so let me just tell you where we're going next year. We're going to start the year off back in Ecclesiastes. We started this last year, Wisdom for the New Year. And this is going to speak to renewing our minds. We're going to learn about what it means to live in a world that's a post-Eden world, a broken world, a world that seems messed up a lot of the times. And we're going to learn how we are to live as wise Christians in that type of world. Ecclesiastes helps us with that. We're hearing about the Lord's fame, it's transforming our way of thinking, and we're applying the wisdom of God in our lives. And we're also going back to Romans. So this will be in the fall of next year. So we're barely going to finish chapter 1. Fingers crossed that we do. But we're going to barely finish chapter 1 by the end of this year. But starting next fall, we're going to jump back into Romans and be in there for a time. Because as you can see there, good theology makes for a healthy church. And again, there are people who say, we don't need theology, we don't need doctrine. Yes, we do. You want to know what happens when you neglect doctrine and theology? You end up with a heretical church that does not know God and does not know the Bible. We don't want to be that church. And so we're going to learn about God so that we can begin to live for God. All right, next, revive our hearts. This is going to be our summer series next year. The Psalms. And we're not going to be in, we're not going to preach all the Psalms. There's 150. So if I were to do that, we'd be here for years and years and years. But what we are going to do is over the summer, we're going to take 8 weeks and we are going to go through 8 different Psalms because as we do God's work, our hearts should be worshipful. This goes with the part of the verse that says, I stand in awe of your deeds, God. I stand in awe of your deeds, Lord. We don't want to just know about God, and so we want our hearts to be moved. One of the best places to go for that is the book of Psalms. It's a worshipful book, and it teaches us how we are to worship God in all aspects of life. And so, lastly, preaching our focus, what are we going to do about redo God's works? Well, after Ecclesiastes and after a short time away, possibly for paternity leave, we're going to jump into the book of Nehemiah. Actually, we might start this before I'm out, but we're going to be in Nehemiah. Because if you know anything about the book of Nehemiah, you know it's a situation where the Jews are finally going to return to the land, and they get there and they see that it's overrun with captors, and the walls are just totally crumbled, the temple's not there anymore, and you have this small group of people who are saying, we know what God wants us to do, now we have to do it. And that whole book teaches us what revival looks like when you have the church being the church in line with God's will. And so that book is going to teach us how we are to participate alongside God as He brings revival to our church. The whole book is telling us what it looks like to be a church that is ready and prepared and willing to be a church that is revived. And so that's where we're going to be for that. And also we're going to end the year with a series I'm calling the Redo series, where we're going to basically go through a number of stories in the Bible and see where God has worked in what seemed like impossible situations to bring about amazing results. And our whole prayer is going to say, God, do them again in our day. If He's done them before, He can do them again. And so that is our heart, that is our focus. And then the big question then becomes, well, what's new next year? And we've got a bunch of fun new things planned for next year. And so you see this kind of pyramid. These are, I said, we need to identify our weak points in our church and strengthen them. So at the base of that, what's going to really be needed, 2 huge holes in our ministry right now. Number 1, men's ministry. Thank you, Doug. As you've heard from the ladies, the women's ministry is thriving, and we praise God for that. And that is also an indictment on the men, because the Bible says that men are supposed to be the leaders. Men are supposed to be the ones who are leading the church and setting the example for the church and setting the example for ministry. I think we are failing at that, which is just like us, because ever since the beginning, man's biggest problem, I know ladies you might have a couple suggestions, but let me just tell you biblically what it is. Man's biggest problem is passivity. Now think about that for a moment. Maybe you don't look at your husband, but just think about it. If you give a man an opportunity to be passive, he will. Think all the way back to the garden. Adam was supposed to work and keep the garden. He was supposed to protect his wife. A serpent comes along and begins to tempt his wife, and the Bible says Adam was standing there the entire time. He's the leader. He's the man. What did he do? Did he speak up? Did he condemn the serpent? Did he run the serpent off and protect his wife? No, he stood idly by while his wife went into sin, and then he joined her into sin. ever since that time, man's biggest problem has been passivity, which is why we like to sit on our hands and let the women do all the work in the church. Is it hurting yet, men? I hope it is. So what we're going to do is, starting next year, we're going to start a men's ministry. I've already got ideas of where we're going for this. I'm hoping to either have it be a once-a-month event, possibly every other week at the beginning of this, and we're going to decide on a date. But I just want to prepare us as a church. We are going to start a men's ministry, and this is going to be part of our prayer for revival for our church, because I believe that the men begin to step up in this church, we will see God do great things and begin to bless this church even more. Next up on our list, we need a youth pastor. We have a huge gaping hole in our ministry. I've presented it this way. It's like we've got this beautiful puzzle, and it's like, oh, wow, I love this puzzle, but it's missing that one piece that's right in the middle, and so you're having a hard time appreciating the picture of the puzzle because it's got this open space there. The youth pastor is that open space in our church. And here's the problem. I've talked about this with the deacons and with the church council. We don't have a lot of youth right now. We have some. I know that we're going to be bringing more in. And so you might be saying, well, we don't have enough youth for a youth pastor. Well, here's the problem with that. You're not going to bring youth in unless you have a youth pastor. And so it's this catch-22 where basically everything has to already be in place in order to see that growth. And so if we're going to pray for growth and if we're going to pray for revival, then I think God is big enough for us to pray and say, Lord, if we add a youth pastor to this church, we're trusting that you will bless that and you will begin to add youth to our church. Do you think God's big enough for that, Georges Creek? That we can add that and God will do that. Now, this will be a part-time position. This is still going to be talked about by the stewardship and the personnel committee. They're going to put something together. But this is something that we're hoping to have in place early next year so that we can begin getting young families in here, begin getting youth in here, because it's a travesty when our youth are having to go to other churches on a Sunday night and a Wednesday night because we have nothing here for them. I want that to stop. And so we need a youth pastor. Next up, we have discipleship. I think this church does a great job at evangelizing. I think this church does a great job at working and being the hands and feet of Jesus. But something we need is discipleship in this church. We have Sunday school, but that's really our only opportunity right now to dig deep and build this fellowship, to dig deeper in the Word, to transform your life. And so we're going to be looking at a number of different ways that we can begin to implement discipleship into our church, where you have older Christians helping younger Christians, you have younger Christians helping older Christians, and basically it's us locking arms with each other and say, we're going to do life together. I think a healthy church has that. And lastly, these are two things that I'm super excited about. Two great things. I've been giddy about this ever since we came up with it. But we're going to add back, Emily. I'm just messing with Emily. That's how I talk to her. So up at the top, we're going to add a pastoral resident. Now, the church council has already agreed to this. I've already written up the description for this, but this is a huge opportunity. So from now on, hopefully for the foreseeable future, over the summer at Georges Creek for 8 weeks, we're going to invite a student at a college, a university who wants to go into ministry, particularly pastoral ministry, to come alongside me and basically shadow me for the duration of those 8 weeks, where they're going to get very practical, hands-on experience in the ministry. So they're going to attend all business meetings with me. They're going to look at what my sermon writing process is like, how we pray through a sermon, how we think about the congregation as we write a sermon, how we present that sermon. This person is also going to be involved in helping out with the Lord's Supper, with baptisms if we have some, possibly baby dedications. I've got a baby on the way. I've already asked someone to do that for me. So this person is going to be doing all that alongside helping out with possibly Sunday school. And something very exciting is, I think every person going into ministry needs to learn how to write a sermon series, because that's not something they teach you in college or seminary. Of all the classes that I took, there was nothing on how to actually put together a sermon series for your church. There was nothing about how do I even serve the Lord's Supper. First time I did that was my first time at this church doing it. So I want this person to be better prepared than I was for the ministry. And so for the first 4 weeks, it's going to be mostly a learning process, shadowing and learning, taking it in. The last 4 weeks, throwing them to the wolves. They're going to actually, in that 4 weeks beforehand, they're going to write a sermon series, pray through it. And in the last 4 weeks, on 4 consecutive Sunday nights during the summer, this person is going to preach an entire sermon series as kind of their final project for the summer. This won't be a salary position, but I'm hoping that we can at least do a stipend for possibly gas money or food or things like that. So we'll put something together for them. And I think I can reveal to you now, this is tentative and everything has to fall into place, but Joseph Bryant is going to be our very first pastoral resident of Georges Creek. And who better, really? I mean, can you think of anyone better? I can't. The kid is awesome. I love him. He is like Timothy. That doesn't make me Paul, but if I was, he would be my Timothy. So I love Joseph, and Joseph found out that North Greenville actually allows students to stay on campus for free and provide them with a number of resources if they're able to have an internship or a pastoral residency over the summer. And so Joseph came to me and said, hey, I'm willing not to go home all summer to Charleston and stay here if this was available. And I said, done. You want to serve in ministry? You want to get experience? We'll do that for you here. And so I'm really excited about that. I think that'll be a great opportunity. And as the years go by, we're going to be adding more and more people who are going to come and get that hands-on experience. Something else that I'm hoping to add, this will be for the fall and potentially spring of 2023, is we're going to add ministry interns. And so this is different from the pastoral residency because this is going to cover all range of ministry. This will be open to someone wanting to go into be a youth pastor, someone wanting to be a senior pastor, someone who's wanting to do worship ministry, someone who's wanting to do media ministry, whether with the soundboard or digital arts, things like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to open this up. This will be totally unpaid, but it'll be a great opportunity, particularly for people like North Greenville students or any other students to come and say, hey, this will be on-the-job experience where I'm actually learning hands-on what God has called me to do. So I'm hoping to open that up, and I'm hoping that our church will begin to have interns who are actually already serving God in the way that He's called them to serve. So these are a lot of the new things. These aren't even all the new things that we're adding, but a lot of great new things for our church. Last slide now, Emily. So the whole thing is we want to look back on this year in appreciation, and we want to look forward to 2022 in anticipation. And I don't know about you. After hearing all that, I know it was a lot to take in, but I'm excited. I look forward to next year, and I look forward to what God's going to do. We have our new focus first. We have our new focus, the renew, revive, redo. This is going to be our entire drive. We have all these new things that we're adding, and our whole prayer for next year is going to be, Lord, revive this church. And I want to read you a quote, because if you think about it in terms of both years, this year we were really focused outward. And that's a great thing. That's what a church has to do in order to be effective. But it's right at appropriate times to begin to look inward. And so this was from Martin Lloyd-Jones when he was speaking about revival in a church. He said, before we think about planning and organizing in order to reach outsiders, let us concentrate upon our own churches. Are our own churches alive? Are our people real Christians? That's a good question we should always ask. Are the people here real Christians? He goes on and says, instead of spreading outward, we should concentrate inward and deepen and deepen and deepen our own spiritual lives until men here and there get to the place where God can use them as leaders of the great awakening which He will spread through the churches and through the land. And that's where we're at now as a church. We prayed for God to bless the work of our hands. We're certainly going to keep doing that in the next year. We're not going to turn away from that. We've gone outward, but I think it's time for us to take 2022 as a year to reflect inward and deepen and deepen and deepen so that we're a healthy church and we're a prepared church, a church that God is ready and willing to revive. That's all I have. Does anybody have any comments or concerns or questions or things that they want to raise at this time about next year? All right. Mazan, do we have a final hymn? Let's sing the final hymn and we'll close in prayer.